So welcome everybody. Here we are here today to talk about a number of changes that will be going into effect as of April 1st as a result of a recent audit of BPA's energy efficiency program controls. We have a lot to cover today, so we'll be going through this relatively quickly. I'll be providing a background of what's happening and the upcoming requirements that will be implemented. We will then hear about the changes to the implementation manual that will be implemented as of April 1st. We'll be talking about the requirement and the process for uploading cost documentation to BPA with a demonstration of how you will do that as of April 1st. We will hear from a few of our customers, and thank you sincerely in advance, that helped us test this process, who have some lessons learned that they want to share that I think will make your lives quite a lot easier. And then finally, we'll be talking about the forthcoming site inspections we'll be doing on a small portion, of our UES portfolio, and concluding today with some next steps and questions. So again, I'll be starting with just a bit of a background for you and a summary of the upcoming requirements. From mid-2024 to mid-2025, the program was subject to an internal controls audit. This was comprehensive and looked at the entirety of our program, and it will result in several changes to the requirements and the processes we implement here at BPA. These changes will take effect on April 1st. And to get here, we established four separate work groups to focus on both the needs and the process to get here. And we involved quite a number of customers in early testing to develop what we'll be talking about here. I believe we came to as good a place as we could get with these requirements, but absolutely we're here to support you and here to answer your questions as we go. Perhaps the most impactful of the new requirements that we're facing is a requirement that utilities will submit all cost documentation for their measures at the time of application. So that is when you submit your application for our review, you will be required to submit cost documentation at that time. That is not to say that we will be doing full and detailed oversight on all applications. We will certainly verify that you've submitted cost documentation, but we will only be doing detailed review of the cost documentation and any additional technical documentation on roughly the same portion of measures that we have in the past. So we take a sampling approach to oversight, and that will continue. However, we will be ensuring that the documentation submitted has been received. And one other change that you should be aware of, and I hope this is well received, is that as of October, we had required our customers to input an installed cost in their UES upload templates. Given that we are asking you for that information to be submitted anyways, we are removing that requirement. So you will no longer be required to input that into your UES upload template. We've already got it. We don't need it. In addition, the other change that will impact customers is a requirement that BPA completes on-site verifications for some small portion of our UES portfolio. Previously, that had been limited to our site-specific portfolio, but we're expanding that in a small way to review some UES installations. This will be done by BPA engineering staff who have the right training and skill set to be able to inspect these installations. And I absolutely want everybody to understand that will work with you and through you to coordinate these before we perform inspections. These are your customers, your homeowners, and your businesses that we'll be working with, and we will ensure that we work through you to make that happen. This will not be a surprise to you. We also are going to ask, but not require, that if customers perform independent site inspections, they let us know. And in some small number of cases, we may request documentation if indeed you have done so. So with that, that's the background. I'll hand the mic over to Amy Burke and Eric Mullendore to talk about the implementation manual changes forthcoming.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what will be impacting the implementation manual. So throughout this process, we really have been focused on limiting changes to the what in terms of what we're requiring for documentation. Wherever possible, we really tried to be very intentional about that. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, customer utilities really should be submitting the cost documentation and retaining it in your file that you've been doing currently. The big change, however, is the when and how that will be submitted. So the timing and method of submittal, both of those are changing. The cost documentation will be submitted at the time of application rather than during oversight for most measures. We are developing an FAQ to discuss cost documentation. This is not meant to be another separate compliance document outside of the IM, but it's really to give us more clarity or give you all more clarity about what we mean by cost documentation. Those will include things like cost documentation and bulk uploads, what does that look like when you're submitting cost documentation with the OLC? What if you have cost documentation that covers multiple measures? So that's something that we're working on and will be published along with the updated IM. So we tried to be really intentional in how we drafted this and limit the number of changes wherever possible. And we really took a look at all the different references to cost. We had a lot. We had equipment cost, we had install cost, project cost, and where it made sense, we were aligning the reference to cost documentation throughout. In some cases, it didn't make sense, and so you'll still see multiple references to cost, but for the most part, cost documentation is the term that we're moving forward with. We also corrected a number of documentation tables to reflect where those documents that are submitted to BPA should also be kept in your customer file. There were a few examples where some documentation tables only require they be submitted to BEAT, but not kept in the customer file. So we tried to make that more consistent. And then we also clarified where data requirements are only required to be entered into the UES upload template, and I'll go over an example of that in a minute, but not be submitted into BEAT. I will also call out, there are a few measures that are exempt from the cost documentation requirement. Those include measures that are self-funded, especially for retail, for residential and retail and coupon or instant rebate measures. We will include the full list in the FAQ once that gets published. So effective April 1st, we are expiring a couple documentation requirements. One is the order and purchase date to be included on your cost documentation. That does impact many of our sectors, so agriculture, commercial, industrial, residential, and the measure distribution channels. The specific sections that those are impacting are called out in the change notice that will be published in the IM. You'll see the full list of that in that list. We are, as Dave had alluded to in an earlier slide, also expiring installed costs to be entered into the UES upload template. So as he said, those costs are included on the cost documentation that will be submitted to BPA. So that was a duplicative requirement with these new changes. We also did remove reference to installed cost requirement in the residential new construction section, just to make sure that that's very clear and reduce confusion. The big caveat here is that for income qualified measure and repair costs, those will still be required to be entered into the UES upload template. For section 8.4.5 for the VRF system retrofit, we are expiring the documentation requirements, indicating that manufacturer and model number only needs to be kept in the customer file and not submitted to BEAT or included on the UES upload template. And with that, I will hand it over to Eric Mentor.
Thank you, Amy. Amy mentioned this term cost documentation, and we wanted to be, as it is a new term for us in the IM, we are adding it to the definitions section. And it's a fairly broad definition. Any documentation that reflects eligible project costs incurred to implement the project. And then here's where we'll have a reference to the UES cost documentation FAQ that Amy already referenced. Again, this isn't creating any new policies or procedures. This is simply communicating how BPA has always done oversight on cost documentation for the impacted measures. In section 1 of the IM, we are adding a sentence. Here you see it bolded in green. BPA's willingness to pay is a cost cap designed not to exceed the total cost of implementation of the measure at the time incentives are set. So this sentence is doing two things. One, it's making clear that the willingness to pay or payment amounts is a cap on BPA's payments to utilities, and secondly, that that payment amount is established in such a way that it's not intended to ever exceed the implementation costs. There may be times where individual projects have documented UES. There may be times where individual UES projects may have documented costs that are less than BPA's willingness to pay, but BPA still pays its willingness to pay. Now, obviously, if we see a trend there, right, where our payments are exceeding the documented costs on a regular basis, that's one of the reasons we would revisit a payment amount for a UES measure. This is in section 2. So we just added a description of the direct fund distribution to the IM in October. And now we are adding an additional sentence clarifying that customers will be required to select DFD as a funding source in BEATS when that is used. So I believe that checkbox already exists, though the form may change in the near future as we work with our BEATS vendor. But we're just asking that the customer be the one to indicate DFD as the funding source. In section 3, we are adding a general description of this requirement. We are removing reference to BEATS because there are situations where customers may use tools such as Box to upload the documentation instead. So there may be times when you're using BEATS, there may be times when you're using Box to upload this cost documentation, and we just wanted to make that clear. This is also where we'll include a link to the BEATS training materials and support resources webpage. And this is where you'll see the latest and most up-to-date versions of instructions on how to upload cost documentation. So I know that we've got, we'll see a demonstration today on the Box instructions, and there may be some forthcoming instructions on BEATS as well as we work with our vendor to implement some changes to that system to make bulk uploading more convenient for folks. Under section 3.2, this is where we're adding a description of basically what David Moody said at the beginning, just this overall policy change about when cost documentation is uploaded. So customers must provide cost documentation at the time of application for all measures where implementation costs are incurred and EEI reimbursement is requested. So you can see there are two caveats there. There are some measures, looking at strategic energy management as an example, where we have not historically recognized implementation costs or tracked implementation costs. We're not going to change that now. And secondly, where EEI reimbursement is requested. So cost documentation does not need to be provided at the time of application for self-funded measures, but may still be requested as part of the oversight process for those measures. These policies will have a very limited impact on custom projects. Really, the only change is on option 2 custom projects, where we're requiring that cost documentation be uploaded at the time of reporting. Traditionally, that was not required until and unless the projects were pulled for oversight. Just to be consistent throughout the IM and to call out the cost documentation requirements separately from the rest of the supporting documentation for these projects. We have added cost documentation as a row in both the option 1 and option 2 custom project documentation requirements tables there, as you can see. But again, for option 1, this is not effectively, this is zero change because you've always had to submit that cost documentation at the time of submittal. And I'm going to hand it back to Amy for section 6.2.
Derek? So section 6.2 for measured distribution channels. This section is referenced exclusively for residential measures, and we just wanted to ensure that this is aligned with these changes. So for end user identifying information, we removed the word may be for required and be. Since for direct install, coupon instant rebate and standard rebate, that is required for those 3 distribution channels. We also, in the effort to align references to cost, changed equipment and contractor invoice to cost documentation, noting here that is required in BEAT for direct install and standard rebate. For the description, we updated the main cost documentation and removed the requirements for order and purchase date, also referencing the cost documentation FAQ. So I'm going to go through, Eric and I are going to go through a series of slides here showing you on the left-hand side the documentation requirements tables with the track changes on the right-hand side the clean version. So these both represent the same documentation requirements tables, but just 2 different versions. I will also say that we are planning on publishing alongside the final PDF version of the IM a track changes version. So you can see in a different way the changes that are impacting the sections that you work with most frequently. So for the tables, and this is impacting multiple sectors, so this is one example. We are, of course, renaming cost to be cost documentation, noting here that that is to be required in BEAT. Noting earlier language saying if it's listed in BEAT, that could also refer to box. And that does also need to be kept in your customer file. We do also want to call out here that if you have cost documentation that has everything, that has like your manufacturer, model number, all of that extra documentation, all that extra data, you don't have to pull out separate cost documentation to be submitted to these and kept in your customer file. You can still submit that to us as a whole. So we also did want to clarify for several measures a little bit of nuance in what we mean by submitting in BEAT. There are some measures where we indicated historically for manufacturer and model number to submit that in BEAT. And we really wanted to be clear for the measures that we have added an asterisk to that particular note. For those instances, that is only required to be uploaded, or excuse me, added to the UES upload template, not uploaded into BEAT or Box on a separate document. The note here, though, is that that information does still need to be retained in your customer file. So, for example, for line voltage thermostats, the manufacturer model number and quantity does need to be included on the UES upload template and on some sort of document kept in your customer file. But the manufacturer model number does not have to be uploaded into BEAT on a separate document.
So for lighting calculators, this is also impacted by non-residential lighting calculators. This is also impacted by these changes. So for new construction projects, we are requiring that the cost documentation that supports the incremental measure cost calculation must be uploaded to the online lighting calculator at the time of submittal to BEAT. So for all the lighting calculator projects, we are asking that the cost documentation be uploaded to the online lighting calculator BPA already has access to that system, and many utilities already are using the system in this way. So we thought it would be easier for folks to just leave the documents in there, and we can access them when the online lighting calculator is uploaded to Beats. I guess the nuance on the new construction project is that we are asking that the cost documentation be the version that supports the incremental measure cost calculation, right? So there are a couple different options for new construction lighting projects. You could be using the whole building methodology. So if you're using that, then we would expect that the cost documentation that is uploaded is for the entire building. If you are using the 25% of lighting equipment approach to documenting cost, then we would expect to see a cost documentation supporting that initial lighting equipment value. And lastly, if you're using the comparison of two lighting designs, then we would expect to see cost documentation of those two lighting designs being uploaded. For retrofit projects, it's a little bit more straightforward. Just your standard retrofit cost documentation being uploaded to the online lighting calculator at the time of submittal to Beats. And you can see that playing out in the documentation requirements table. I believe this is the only table where we've added a third column for specifically for the online lighting calculator to distinguish it from Beats. And we also noted that we still had the customer file checked for the completed lighting calculator. We have transitioned to an online lighting calculator, and there's no means by which that could be saved to a customer file. So we just are making it clear here that the expectation is just that the lighting calculator be maintained in the online lighting calculator after submittal to Beats. Those calculators are locked down after you've submitted them to Beats, but we don't want to see changes to those calculators after they've been uploaded. And then calling out aligning to that term cost documentation as opposed to the phrasing that was previously there, product or contractor invoice. Here we see an example from a commercial measure, air source heat pump retrofit and upgrade. Oh yeah, this one is, I think, noteworthy. It follows the same template that Amy already highlighted. But in October, we had rolled out a kind of a self-attestation path to documenting installation of this and several other commercial measures. That really isn't necessary anymore, as we have shifted to separating the technical requirements from the rest of the cost documentation line item. So if, for example, an air source heat pump is installed as part of a new construction project, it is okay if your cost documentation is just represents the entire cost of that new construction project. We wouldn't expect that the manufacturer, model number, and equipment quantity would necessarily appear on that cost documentation. So now that it is its own row, that information could be, if it is on the invoice, great, that's all you need. If on the other hand it is not, then you could use an inspection document or something similar to document those technical values associated with the project. So again, we're not explicitly describing cost or the self-attestation methodology anymore in the IM, but the same approach could be used to document these additional line items that you might not find in the cost documentation document. Back to Amy.
Hey, Derek. In our further attempt to clean up some of the documentation requirements table, we did want to call out for the measures that use or reference section 6.2. We have removed the language end user identifying information, including unique site ID and address, and just pointing people to reference section 6.2. The reason for that is that was more or less boilerplate language. And in some cases, if you had a measure that used multiple measure distribution channels, it wasn't necessarily always the most accurate. So you'll see in section 6.2 which measures require the unique site identifying IDs and which do not. But this is regarding a few updates to the income qualified section. One for payment, and I'm just going to read this verbatim to be clear. For income qualified measures, customers are required to provide detailed cost documentation for all claimed measure and repair costs at the time of application. Payment for income qualified measures will be limited to the lesser of documented measure costs or any applicable cost caps. And of course, those cost caps are listed in the payment table. For repair costs, also calling out that payment for repair costs will be limited to any documented costs. So making sure that the repair costs are called out clearly on the cost documentation that gets submitted. I also do want to call out a few updates to the header in the payment table that I thought were significant. Removing the reference dollar for dollar, except as noted for installed cost measure. One is we're moving away from the term installed cost, and also clarifying that for many of our measures, we do have a cost cap. And so just wanted to be very clear about that. And also for the header for repair costs, removing the language payment dollar for dollar. Effective last year, we did implement a new policy with a percentage-based cost cap for repair costs. So the payment dollar for repair costs is no longer accurate.
Okay, hello. Mike Palmer here, currently on the system team. I'll be doing an overview of cost documentation upload methods, discussing other audit-related changes to these, and then handing over to my system team colleague, Matt McClatchy, for a demo. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'll start by going over documentation submission infrastructure. So Beats does not presently have bulk documentation upload capabilities. We're working with our vendor to enable bulk file uploads in Beats, but we don't expect that will be ready by April 1st. So in the meantime, we tested a non-Beats file submission process through a program called Box. Box is a one-way bulk file transfer program that meets FedRAMP security standards, and it's very similar to Dropbox if you've ever used that. Over a dozen customers have tested Box, provided feedback, and helped us get prepared for a smooth rollout. And long term, we do plan to have a bulk upload process available in both Beats and Box. Next slide, please. Okay, what goes where? So first, I do want to clarify that the new requirement for cost documentation only applies to UES, non-res lighting, and option 2 custom projects. BPA already collects cost documentation at submission time for all other programs. For large files or mini files at once, we do recommend Box, and we will be sending customers a link to that by April 1st. And for individual file uploads, you're welcome to use Box for these, and alternatively, you can use the documentation upload process that's already available in Beats. So that's where you navigate to a specific application, click on the Documents tab, and attach files. I think that process is a bit more tedious, but if you have infrequent and low volume submissions, it is an option. And then for non-res lighting, cost documentation can be submitted directly into the online lighting calculator. Okay, other changes to Beats. So there are some additional small changes being made to Beats as a result of the audit. This is kind of just explaining what Amy and Eric touched on earlier, like how's that going to look in Beats. So a checkbox will be added to the UES utility review form where utilities can indicate they've completed a site inspection. And next, DFD project identification will be slightly changed. So currently, BPA staff is responsible for checking the direct funding button on the funding determination form. But moving forward, the direct funding button will be changed to a yes/no dropdown, and utilities will be responsible for changing that dropdown to yes for direct funded projects. And there will also be a space to enter the DFD agreement number on that form. Next, currently when users submit bulk uploads, the username is retrieved by Beats, but it's only stored in the application history. It's not particularly visible. So going forward, the username will be visible on the admin form and added to certain reports. And then lastly, we're adjusting the oversight workflow to allow applications to move straight from compliant status to oversight status and bypass the need for oversight documentation upload. So that's following up on what Eric just talked about in those situations where we do get all of the documentation like included in a packet. So the cost docs and anything else that would be required for oversight, there's no need for us to reach back out to you to submit that document again. We've already got it. So we just skip that oversight doc upload step and move application straight to oversight. And I do want to stress that that is purely optional. We're only requiring cost docs up front, and anything else provided is at customer discretion, but could save you some time too. Okay, I will hand it over to Matt for a closer look at Bach.
Thank you, Mike. So on this slide, we have a link, again, Eric alluded to this earlier, our training materials and support, which you're all familiar with. So again, this is on our Beats website that we already have. We've updated it with a section for cost documentation. This is kind of what Mike touched on earlier, just some recommendations from us on, depending on what program you're using, how we recommend getting those files. When we have a Beat solution in place, we'll update this with instructions on how to do that as well. We also have a training video here. There's more coming. This is just how to get signed up for Box. We also have more training videos coming on how to use Box, so don't worry about memorizing anything that I'm going to show you today. This will all be recorded and on this website, as well as a user guide for Box and when we have it for Beats. So I will go ahead and just give you a quick demo on how to use Box. So each utility is going to get a one-way link. Don't worry about trying to go on the Box website and hunting on how to set up an account or anything like that. We're gonna send you a link. We'll be in contact, which will help you create your accounts and then how to navigate to upload your files. So when you get this link, we highly recommend bookmarking it. That's what I did here, because you'll use the same link every time you come in here to upload files. If you lose it or need it for some reason, reach out, we can get it to you, no big deal, but it will always be the same link. So if you're a utility customer, you're gonna initially hit this screen here. It's gonna ask you, are you a part of Bonneville Power Administration or are you not? And you are gonna select the option for not part of Bonneville. It's going to take you to this login page. Again, I'm not going to go into the sign up process today. There is a video back on this site that walks you through that. Very good video. And it'll also be in the user guide that we're going to send out. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. And once you log in, you're going to land on a page that looks something like this. This is going to have your utility here. Expedition is just one of BPA's test utilities, but you know, if you're part Clark, it'll say Clark. If you're Fall River, etc. You see your utility here, you know you're in the right spot. We have some instructions here on just like how you can get your files ready using some sort of unique identifier on the file names so that we can easily track it down. Example projects. I'll note you don't have to put all of these things in the project names. These are just some helpful examples on how you might name your files. We also ask if you could, for UES measures, if you could include your UES template. That just makes it even easier for us to identify which file goes to which line in your template when you submit to Beats. And then for submissions over 10 files or more, we ask that you please make a zip file. We have instructions on how to do that in our user guide if you need to. And then just reach out to us if you have questions. So as far as loading the files, you really just have two fields here, a description field of what you're loading. So we'll just go ahead and call this February, and then the actual files you want to load. So when you open this up, you can select your files. You can put them in here one at a time. Take zip files or any other type of files. You can also drag and drop if you just want to pull a whole bunch. And you'll kind of see they'll all be in the staging area. So this is a one-way file drop. Once they're sent to BPA, you won't be able to come in and view them or anything or see what you loaded. You'll just get a confirmation message that your files were sent. So if you want to do a quick review here to make sure you're grabbing all the files you need, you can kind of see them in the staging area. So once you have all your files, you'll just go ahead and click submit. And you'll kind of see these status bars load as your files go. And then you'll get a success message. So that's kind of it. It's a one-way trip. Once they've landed in a box, BPA will see them immediately, and we can begin reviewing them. And they'll reach out if they need anything else from you.
All right, so next we'll talk about how utilities can prepare with lessons learned from early testing and some special guest stars. Next slide, please. Okay, so this has been touched on a few times this morning, but worth repeating. If the cost documentation is bundled in a single file along with other project info, you do not need to break it out from the other pages. I would say whatever is easiest for your own process, as long as the cost documentation is included. Please do not include end user first names or last names in the cost documentation file name. Addresses are okay. And first names, last names, which are considered personally identifiable information, they can exist inside the document itself. So if you've got an invoice that has a customer name in it, that's fine, but just please keep the first name and last name out of the file name itself. And we'll provide some examples for file names on the next slide. But we are not requiring that file names be named in a specific format. We just need to be able to match the application in Beats to a cost document based on the file name. So there's a variety of ways to do that, and let's go to the next slide and take a look at those. Okay, so these are examples that came through during box testing, and I won't go through all of these one by one, but just for some examples, we've got on the first row there, we've got the measure and the address. That's excellent. We were able to match that up. Next row, we've got wildcard plus measure plus site ID, also great. And then on the third row, just the wildcard. That was the only data element in the file name, and that works too. So the common thread in all those examples is that there's a unique value and something that can be matched up to an application in Beats. Down at the bottom, we've got two examples of file names that we were not able to match up. So in one, we've just got, the file name was just 8/2025. So that's the submission month, presumably, but in that month, we received, lots of applications. So couldn't really tell which one that went with. And then similarly, we've got a refno plus a submission date. And, in that submission, there were multiple instances of that refno. So again, not quite enough to get us matched up. So the key is, something unique. And so hopefully, we know utilities have different processes on their side. So whether that be address, site ID, wildcard, project name, something unique is ideal. And some questions came up, like a question that came up was what to do if you have a single invoice for multiple applications. Like for example, if you've got attic, wall, and floor installation all on a single invoice at a single site. So you don't need to upload that same document 3 times. Just include some info in the file name that makes it clear which applications are associated with that file. So the address will work just fine for that. We've got the address in Beats, and I would expect the address would be the same on all 3 of those applications. And then if we've got one file that has that address, then there we go. We can put 2 and 2 together that single invoice has cost information for all 3 measures. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Melissa to go over best practices.
Hey, everybody, you can hear me? Thumbs up? All right. So, okay, great, thanks. So I wanted to start this off by saying thank you to utilities, a number of which are on this call today, for your discussions around your current processes, your time spent on using the Box tool, your engagement on this process, because it definitely helped us get to a better place. But that being said, I wanted to give a couple utilities the opportunity to speak to their experience. And we'll start with Jessica Schreiber from Mason 3. We've got a few questions for you on the slide. If you would be able to come off mute and give us your perspective.
Hi, yes, thanks, Melissa. So starting off, how did you organize your files to prepare them for upload? Whenever we completed a file and sent it to accounting for the check to be paid to the customer, we saved that file in another separate area that we have just for Beats upload. And within that, we have, the upload templates, we add it to the upload template, and then we save the file with the naming convention. We use the wildcard and then the reference names like clothes washer, and then we use our site ID in there as well. And what we have is a packet that includes all of the information we would send for oversight is the same information that our internal department needs for verification. So we just save it into a big file, and then at the end of the month, just zip it into one little file and then upload it right into Box. It was super easy, took me like a minute just to drag and drop it over. The part that took the longest was, I guess, like Box testing process, and then like best practices, just kind of jumping into the other ones. The part that took the longest was renaming everything. So if you could start now, I would suggest it. Just change your naming convention. We had to go through our IS department to change uploads. So we have automatic uploads into the internal software that we use here. So we had to change those. Had to change how stuff is stored in accounting. We had to change stuff with how we report for like auditing purposes, and like our rules and regulations on that. We had to change file retention with records. So we had to basically go to every single department and change a little bit of something to comply with having these new name changes. But saving everything how we did before, and then if we were to upload with like change the name later, it took about 4 to 5 hours to change names for about a couple hundred projects. I think we were right around like 190 for that month. So I think if you are able to change the name to where when you complete the project, you just name the file as what it needs to be for this upload process, that it will go really smooth. As well as getting set up with Box, that was a whole thing. We had to like go through our IS and like request for me to get an account. So I think it depends on the utility, like how involved the setup process is, but you can always play around with it now too and try and upload, I guess. Yeah.
Thanks, Jessica. I really appreciate those tips. I agree with you that getting set up in Box could be a factor for some customers who need to check in with their IT. As Matt showed, we do have the sign-up video available. Anybody, even though you won't have your link yet, you could get signed up with Box ahead of time and just have that ready to go when the link is available, if you'd like. Okay, Stacy from Clark PUD.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Stacy.
Okay, perfect. Stacy. Thank you. So our end result was pretty similar. We have a different way of processing invoices, though. So for us, we have a team that kind of collects the documentation for the customer retention packet, and then kind of prepares it, compiles it, and then routes it for review and approval. And then we pay them and then report them the next month. So we have a little bit different process. So we found the easiest way for us to fit that into our process was to create a folder for that rebates team to drop a copy of the invoice documents into with our chosen titling. So we went with the wildcard unless the invoice was going to cover multiple measures, and then we went with the site ID. And then just, as I do reporting after the fact, so when I'm reconciling my UES measure template, I can go through and sort by that wildcard and pull all of those out and put them into a compressed folder. And then if I have any multiple ones, I can pull those then. And then if there are extra items in there, they're just sitting in there for the next round, because sometimes at the end of the month we don't know which month it's going to process through to on our side. So pretty similar for us. We didn't have a lot of that we don't have to name our files in a certain way, so we didn't have that challenge. And it was just more about finding a way to keep organized and to make it easy on the back end to reconcile quickly. And I'm a big fan of pipelines, so I just kind of created a pipeline with my folders that these are the ones to be uploaded. The zip file would be the uploaded ones, and then you just kind of keep month by month moving through that. And we'll probably retain our zip folder with our other documentation too, so we know what was uploaded for each month.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Aaron Hope. I'm the engineering manager at Energy Efficiency. Some of you have worked with me over the years. If not, you do work with our customer service engineers. So I'm going to give a quick overview of the site inspection process and then get to the FAQs. The FAQs are where the key information. So for the site inspection, the utility, your PCS, formerly your COTR, the PCS will send a notification to the utility by email. You'll have the information from BEAT, and it'll be sent to the same contact that the oversight notifications are. So the automated notifications from BEAT on oversight, PCS will be sending the notification to that. And then within 3 business days or very shortly after that, the engineer will contact you about to arrange the date and time for verification. The engineer will typically be your customer service engineer, but if they're not available or we need to send somebody else, the engineer assigned will be contacting you. So this will be what you'll see when you receive a notification. If it looks familiar, it's very almost identical to the oversight notification BEAT sends out. So it'll have the information, the project name, all the information from BEAT, and then the PCS, you'll get it directly emailed from the PCS. It won't come automated from BEAT like the oversight or the oversight email. So after the site inspection, and I'm going through this, and then we'll get to the FAQs because that's where the key information is. But if there's no compliance issues found, the engineer will notify the PCS in the year that the inspection is complete. If the utility if you didn't participate, go on site with the engineer, then they'll notify you as well. If a compliance issue is found, and we'll go more in detail on the FAQs, they'll notify the PCS and myself, and then the PCS will work with you on the compliance issue, determine next step. And then once we're done, there is a form that the engineer will use. It's a simple who, what, where, what measure they look at form, what they verify, and that gets uploaded to BEAT with as part of the measure information. So let's get into the facts. This is where I prefer to go over things because we have a lot more detail. These are going to be published with the other FAQs, so you can refer to them if you need to. So as Dave went over at the beginning, we're required to do 5. We've decided that we're going to do 10 site verification, 2 per utility for 5 utilities per fiscal year. Not very much. It's pretty straightforward and easy. The reason we're doing 10 instead of just a minimum of 5 is in case the customer refuses or there's an issue found, the 10 makes sure that we well exceed, that we have 5 good site inspections. How many will each utility have? Well, if you're selected for that year, you'll have 2 different UES projects. And it could be, and those UES projects will be across all sectors, or it could be any of the sectors. So it could be a commercial industrial to industrial. It just depends on what you reported for the previous year. How often? Our goal is every few years, but for some of the high volume utilities, it will you may get collected more often. It really depends on the volume of EEI funded UES projects reporting each year. Very small utilities that have very few won't be that often. Some the larger utilities, it'll be a little. As I said about the notification, the PCS will send you that email giving you all the information about the project. Will the year be notified? They'll be notified after it's completed. Since it's compliance verification, we're treating it the same as oversight. So that's why the PCS is sending out the notification, just like BEATS does for oversight. And then the PCS and the engineer are involved in the verification. The engineer is physically involved. The PCS has a role to play too. Can you contact your ear? Oh, absolutely. Yes. If you have questions, please do. They're going to be very familiar with the process. They may not know ahead of time that you were selected for verification, but they'll understand the process. They'll know they can help guide you on what to expect, things like that. One thing they cannot do is attend or be part of the site visit. Because it's compliance, our compliance department determined that it wouldn't be appropriate for the ear to attend that actual site visit. But they'll be informed and they can talk to the customer service engineer about it if there's questions and help you through the process. The BPA engineer, typically your customer service engineer, will be conducting the oversight or the site verification. If they have a full workload, the timing's off, or based on experience, another engineer might be assigned. A good example of that is industrial. If we do industrial verification, most likely it's going to be one of our two industrial engineers going out on site, Con Evanson and Mariah Sullivan. They have the experience with industrial, they have a better idea what they are going to look at, things like that. So that's where it may not be your customer service engineer. What's your role? What's the utilities role and responsibility? We request that you reach out to your customer, the end user, to notify of site verification and arrange a date and time. We prefer that you do the arranging. We can work with you. We'll give you dates and times. We'll make ourselves available based on their schedule and your schedule. But they are your customers, and we want you fully involved in it. What if they refuse? We will let us know of that immediately, and the engineer is going to work with you to find a solution. If they have concern, we can answer the question, make sure they're fully knowledgeable of what to expect or what we're looking at. And if we have to, we may find an alternative similar project. And if what if the project is unable to complete the issue or correct the issue, if an issue is found, then it gets treated the same as oversight. Just like if the PCS finds an issue during oversight, they'll work with you to find a solution and resolve the issue. So if we do find an issue out there, yes, you can expect it to be treated just like finding an issue in oversight.
Yeah, let's go ahead and quickly move through, and I do want to acknowledge that quickly next steps and offer questions. We do stand ready to answer your questions. Please do contact your ear directly. But as the next steps, we'll be sending out box-specific links no later than April 1st. So we will be sending your utility-specific links to you soon. Our target is before then, but no later then. We are targeting an implementation manual release date of March 16th, so everybody is aware of that. And we will be sharing supporting documentation on March 12th, and we may end up creating more documentation as we get more questions that will come out after. And again, if you have any questions or concerns, please do contact your ear. We stand ready to help, and I stand ready to support anything you need. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time today.